Good evening, welcome to the Medfield School Committee meeting of January 13th. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a full agenda. First, approval of minutes. We're going to go back over the FY15 budget and talk again about the potential expansion of full-day kindergarten. The superintendent's got several items of interest to report to us, and then we would always welcome public input. So I'm going to kick it off with the
Okay, I reviewed the minutes for the October 8th regular meeting and executive session, and I recommend that they be approved as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
And I've also reviewed the minutes for the October 21st regular meeting, and I recommend that they be approved as submitted as well.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, old business FY15 budget. If you remember at our last meeting, we went through the budget in terms of where we are so far, some of the budget drivers, some of the assumptions we made in developing the FY15 budget, and then some of the goals that we had when we started developing the budget, and then lastly, what that 3.98% increase does for the district and what that accomplishes. So, I know you've had some time. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions or directions to me, because next time at our next, I think the 31st, our next meeting will be the time that you folks vote on. So entertain any information or any questions that you may
have. I've been through it, and I think people, when they read it, I know there are some folks who have advanced copy, and I've gotten a couple of questions. I think people just need to remember, or folks who review it just need to remember that the notes are all enumerated under each change. I get a lot of questions about, geez, why has this gone up so much, especially when I got on the technology budget, and I know there's a whole full-time equivalent that just moved from one to the other. So I think that's important to keep in mind as a meeting. Those are helpful. Have there been any other changes since this past week?
We haven't made any other changes. Certainly some of the changes that were made, as you just said, were state reporting issues, and Charlie had looked at some of the chart of accounts and some of the reporting and the year report. It made sense to move some of these and categorize them in different places. Like, for instance, one of the things that was a major change, I think, was the professional development piece. So content specialists have in the past had the professional development money allocated to them. We took that to centralize it and put that in one place. So we put an additional $23,000 in professional development that would have been out and around in all the other content specialists. So I think that was a way for us to, what we want to look at is develop a 3-year plan for professional development. Talk to the staff, what do you want, and then look at it administratively, develop that professional development plan, and then centralize how we provide that professional development. So that was the real impetus of that, is to kind of centralize that and begin that process, and then over the summer and into the next school year have that 3-year plan for it. Certainly the wild cards are collective bargaining. All 4 contracts are up right now. So at the end of this year, so we'll start negotiating fairly soon for all four deals, plus contract, and certainly a budget driver as well. We'll go out in February, and we should get a pretty good sense in early spring what that looks like in terms of the bus contract.
So then we voted at the next meeting, and then the public hearing is in March, is that right? Right, Charlie?
I believe the public hearing is before you adopt the budget. I don't have a budget calendar, draft budget calendar.
Yeah, I think it's that same meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Before you vote on the budget, I do that.
Yeah, that seems so public.
okay. Anything else on the budget? Dr. Martin?
Okay, next thing is the full-day kindergarten expansion proposal. And I do have a presentation on that, so let me just start up the computer here. We talked at our last meeting about that, so I want to formalize the actual presentation and a proposal to you. So in the proposal, we'll look at our current model here in Medfield and what that looks like. What does the research tell us about full-day kindergarten? The benefits of full-day kindergarten, I have some data on that. We'll look at full-day kindergarten in Massachusetts and see how we stack up as a school district. Why a tuition-based program? I think that's some of the feedback that I've gotten from folks. And then the data that we got from the Medfield survey, we had 244 folks respond to that. And then a proposed model for 2014, 2015. So our current model, we have multiple sessions of half-day. Right now we have 7 sessions. And then we have 1 classroom of integrated full-day kindergarten. So when I got a chance to sit down with Andrew Trasher and Dr. Quigley to talk about the history of full-day kindergarten in Medfield, what that looked like. And one of the things that we discussed is that really the impetus of starting a full-day kindergarten here was to expand the already in place integrated preschool program. So students that needed additional support, that were coming out of our preschool program, that needed additional support in kindergarten, that fit the bill for them. And then having some model students also go in there. So we're looking at normally 10 to 15 kids per year have open slots in the full-day kindergarten. The current Medfield model, what happens here, so it leads to many families losing the lottery. I think that folks that are familiar with how it works, they put their name in, and then if you're one of the lucky 10 or 15, you get in. If not, then you're not part of the full-day kindergarten program. Dr. Quigley has reported to me that there's a waiting list of at least 50 or more kids each year, and parents that want to do that. It really makes families look at other alternatives. You know, sometimes they need to go to other towns. I talked to a mom who sent her child to a private full-day kindergarten in Devon because they felt the need for the full-day kindergarten. They didn't get in for the lottery, so now families are going out of town. And then, you know, this is something we talked about last time. You have that local cottage industry to fill the void that the Medfield Public Schools can fill for their kids. So you have places like Kidsborough and you have Garden School that, I mean, they didn't just pick Medfield just to pick Medfield. They knew that there was an opportunity there and that there wasn't enough full-day kindergarten for the need, and they wanted to run their business and build their business with that. So one of the landmark, research projects on full-day kindergarten is a full-day versus half-day kindergarten. Which children learn more in which program? So Lee et al. In 2006 had done this, and it was in the American Journal of Education. And one of the things that makes this really important is that it has that sound research standard. So it was longitudinal over time, it was large, and it was national. So over 8,000 students were studied in this, in 500 schools across, and it was urban, suburban, and rural kids. So that makes it a little different too, because many studies you see in full-day kindergarten focus on urban kids. This one spanned urban, suburban, and rural. So 58% of the kids were in full-day kindergarten in this study, 42 were in half-day, and then at the end of this, the beginning and the end, so they did a pre and post, they used the untimed cognitive assessments, literacy, math, and general knowledge. So that's kind of the design of the study, and one that is cited most often, you know, in terms of full-day kindergarten. So some of the major findings. Children in full-day kindergarten learn more literacy and mathematics than students in half-day kindergarten. Full-day kindergarten students spend 30% more time on literacy than half-day, and 46% more time in mathematics than half-day. And then here's one of the biggest findings of all, is that full-day kindergarten is equally effective for children of all social backgrounds. So a lot of prior studies said that it was most effective for urban kids or kids of low socioeconomic. This study came out because it was nationwide and it was in urban, suburban, and rural. It showed that even kids that have means can benefit from this program. So in terms of benefits, other benefits of full-day kindergarten, so academically, they learn more reading and math, which we just discussed. They exhibit more independent learning, involvement in productivity in school. They spend more time in self-initiated activities and less time in large group instruction. And that numerous studies indicate reduced special education referrals in grades 1, 2, and 3 because of this. So that last bullet, really importantly, and financially as well. So the less referrals you have, the less students you have in the program for special education, which we know costs more money. If you get children in the school and you can provide the interventions they need in a full-day setting versus a half-day setting, at the end of kindergarten, we're going to be in fairly good shape. Certainly, this goes along with the thinking of universal preschool, again, getting those interventions in early and making sure that kids do well early on. So developmentally and socially, really important for kids as well in this grade level. So they develop that stamina they need to survive and succeed in a rigorous academic environment. You know, they can last the whole day. I've been a superintendent or principal, and I've seen it full-day kindergarten, the 2 districts I've been in where we've had it, and they can do it, and they do it well. More consistent learning schedule, and this is an interesting finding out of this Rothenberg study because if you think about it, if you're in school for 2.5 hours a day and there's all the other things that go on in school, and the learning might just get to the exposure level, and then all of a sudden it stops, and you have to come back the next day, and there's that lapse in time, whereas in a full day, you have that full day to go through that. So instead of just looking at maybe 80 minutes of instructional time, you have additional instruction time to build on that, and not only just expose, but master the skills that we want. And certainly more opportunities to develop socially. You know, Open Circle is a social competency program we have in this district, very important. Certainly can do a lot more of that on a full day and a half day. And in full day, kids would have lunch, recess, and specials. Now they would have specials in half day, but only 30 minutes. We expand that to 40 minutes in the full day program. So again, lots of other opportunities for kids to develop socially in the classroom and outside the classroom. So what does that look like in Massachusetts full day kindergarten? So you start going through this data and you have that aha moment a little bit. So this is from the 2012-2013 school year. So 87% of kids in Massachusetts are in full day kindergarten. Only 12% of Medfield kids are in full day kindergarten. Think about that. Only 12% of our kids are in full day kindergarten that are getting that experience. 242 communities are tuition free, so they have absorbed the cost of full day kindergarten in their budget. It becomes part of their budget process, whether it's done through Chapter 70 because of the reimbursement from the state, or they value it as a community and they just absorb that tuition right in there. 20 communities offer no full day kindergarten at all. Interesting facts here. Medfield has the third highest tuition right now in Massachusetts for full day kindergarten, yet the lowest percentage of participation in a tuition-based full day kindergarten program. 11 out of the top 15 school districts in Boston Magazine this year have full day kindergarten for all their kids, all of them. So you look at the W's and the Dovers and the Sherburns, all their kids go full day kindergarten. So why tuition-based? Because when we did the survey, 76% of the people really felt strongly about having full day kindergarten and paying for it. And there was other folks that didn't want to pay for it, but they felt strongly about it. So there was questions like, or comments like, well, you know, I pay taxes in town. I get that, you know, we understand. Why is a tuition for full day kindergarten when there's no tuition for first grade? You know, if I wanted to pay tuition for my kid, I would have lived somewhere else or gone to private school. So all those kinds, which are all valid comments, you know, certainly without understanding of how this all works and why we have a need for tuition-based kindergarten. So first of all, Massachusetts does not mandate full day kindergarten. Okay, so that they reimburse you or through the Chapter 70 program, you only get half a kid, essentially. So when you do the report on October 1 and you do all the enrollment that particular day to get the funding for the next year, kindergarten kids count as half a kid. And that was kind of what I did here. So tuition must cover the cost of additional staff, teachers, aides, specialists, cost of supplies. You know, also included in that, in my former district, because of the secretarial help that was needed to kind of get some of the checks and do all that work, a portion of secretary in one of the buildings was paid out of that. So her job expanded, but we just paid her out of a different pot to get her paid. But again, those are some of the things that the tuition would cover. Also the cost of supplies. So now we're looking at kids, instead of going for 2.5 hours a day, going for 6 hours a day. Well, we need more supplies, both curriculum materials, but also everyday supplies as well. And then certainly, given the current expectations of the town for FY15, we certainly cannot absorb these costs. The town, the expectation from Warren Committee in the town is a 2.5% increase. I don't think that we'd be able to absorb all the costs of full day kindergarten without charging tuition. So if we feel it's important and the parents feel it's important and they feel committed to pay and we feel committed to offer the program, then it makes sense for us to do that. So here's the data from the survey that we did. We had this open for a little over 2 weeks. So 244 participants, 123 of those have kids starting kindergarten in September 14, and then you'll see 15 and 16 as well. We want to get a flavor of what it looks like for the next 3 years, get a sense of what people are thinking. Would you be interested in tuition-based full-day kindergarten with an estimated tuition between $35,000 and $4,000? Again, we didn't want to say, are you interested in full-day kindergarten? Because I think we'd get probably 98% yes. We wanted to know whether you're interested and you're willing to pay the tuition. So 74% yes, 26% no. I have to tell you, probably the folks that, if you answered no on this particular question, you could leave some comments. And many people did do that. I would say that probably 50% of those comments dealt with, I'm all for it, just don't want to pay it. So let's take a look at what that day might look like, half day versus full day. So currently in a half-day program, 2.5 hours a day, 425 hours per year. So again, these are all estimates, but it kind of gives you a flavor of what the difference would be here. So 10 minutes for entry, and probably maybe a little bit longer with all the snowsuits and boots and all that other good stuff now. 30 minutes for specials, 5-minute transition to specials, 10 minutes for snack, 10 minutes for dismissal, and that might be a little bit longer based on how much gear they're going to put on at a particular time of year. So that leaves 85 minutes a day to address core curriculum, our reading, our math, writing, social studies, science, all of that piece. 85 minutes. So looking at the full day program now, 6 hours a day, 912 hours per year, 10 minutes for entry, and I tried to highlight some of the areas that would be different from full to half. So 10 minutes for entry, 40 minutes for special, so add additional 10 minutes there. 10 minutes transition, because now they're transitioning to lunch, recess, and specials. So again, more opportunities for kids. 10 minutes for snack, 25 minutes for lunch, 25 minutes for recess, 230 minutes to address the core curriculum. 85, 230. Significant. Almost triple. So here's the proposal. Proposal would be to expand and improve the current model of full day to provide opportunities up to 100 students. We feel that based on the space that we have right now and the classroom configurations, that we can fit up to 100 students, which would be 5 classes of 20. Reduce the current tuition. Current tuition is $4,500. Reduce that to $3,500 per year. And then also obviously keep the half-day model for those parents that want that. So it's not we're not forcing folks into full-day kindergarten if they don't want that, but we still have the half-day model available. And then look at the possibility of getting a full-day kindergarten grant from the Department of Education, 2015-2016, and that grant would give us money to offset costs, but it would also have a built-in slide scale, which is required if you accept the grant money. So that sliding scale would be folks would have to give us information, and if they can't pay the full tuition, we have a sliding scale of what they could pay based on the state formula. This grant is interesting because when you look at the criteria for it, and you look at Medfield doesn't really qualify for a lot of the criteria. It's certainly geared toward certain urban areas. However, in speaking with my colleagues, many districts around this area haven't received that. So I think that's what their first choice is. But if you put the application in, hopefully we'll get additional money on that. And then the long-term goal in my mind would be to have all kids in full-day kindergarten all the time, and then look at expanding preschool for all that kind of thing. I mean, I think you start to see the benefits of what that can do. One of the things that struck me a little bit with the Boston Magazine data, and I know it before anyone says it, because I know half the people in the room are thinking it, per pupil expenditure is one of the 22 items on there, indicators for where you rank. Because I think every time I mention that, Boston Magazine, I don't even get magazine out, and people say, well, per pupil is so low. That's one of 22 indicators. So it's weighted the same as all the other ones. So I think there's other stuff going on there that we need to take a look at. If you look at the districts that are 1 through 15, and you look at their 3rd grade language arts score on MCAS, which is really a pretty good indicator of what the future is going to be like for folks, for school districts. Every single one of those districts, excuse me, in numbers 1 to 15 have the percent of advanced and proficient in the 80s and 90s percent. Okay, all of them, all 15 of them. Okay, we're in the mid-70s. So these are the things that you think, well, what's the big deal? These are the things that make a huge difference in early education, because, as my friend Dr. Quigley says, no one notices a problem in your foundation in your house. Oh, what is it? No one notices a problem in the foundation until there is one, something like that. But the point is that we need to invest and prioritize early childhood education. It means a lot, and it means a lot to the success going forward in what our district has. So that's my proposal, and I would absolutely entertain any questions, comments, or concerns you may have.
What goes into that tuition rate? How will we be able to decrease it from 4,500 to 3,500? Is it volume and then shared resources?
Right.
Or?
It's basically because we only had 15 slots, so it's 4,500. So now we expand that more, we can reduce it $1,000 and still cover the expenses. And it's pretty much in line too. I have this in front of me, some of the local area surrounding towns that have tuition. Canton, 3,500, Dedham, 3,400, Holliston, 35, Hopkinton, 4,000, Medway, 34, Norfolk, 36, Walpole, 38, Wayland, 4,000, Rentham, 3,500. So it's pretty much in line with everyone. You know, it's not 4,500 is almost an outlier. This brings it more in line with other communities.
Can you go over the teachers too? So, you said, what did you say, 4 or 5 classes of full day kindergarten?
Right.
And then a couple of classes of half day?
Right.
Okay, and so how does that affect how many teachers we have in kindergarten right now?
So it would look like we'd add 2.5 teachers and then also add additional staff in the aides as well. And then you have to add additional time for specialists. But all that is covered with tuition. That's how we factored that all in. Now that's with the assumption that, you know, we're gonna get 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 kids. So I may come back to you in a month and say, well, you know what? Everyone said they wanted to pay it, but guess what? 20 people don't want to. 20 people want to do it, no one else. So then it changes. So we would adjust our budget. But right now, the budget that you have, the 3.98% increase, factors in that all that will be covered by tuition. It's not in that budget at all.
So 100 kids is 76% of the incoming class. Is that roughly? You
Yes.
said it was like 70.
Right. So what we need to look at is what if 130 kids want full day kindergarten? So that's what we need to look at. I think we're being conservative with 100, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. I mean, based on the feedback I've gotten over the last 6 months, it seems like it's something that folks want. And there are other people that have commented and said, you know what, we'd love to have my kid in math twice a week instead. That's fine. I mean, I think we just need to give them the opportunity.
I love that design so that you're not saying everybody has to do full day all at once, you know, especially in Medfield, like give people a chance to
Sure.
kind of absorb it, because some people might choose not to have their kid, you
And
know,
that's-
your youngest, you
fine.
want them home, you read to them all day long, you know, so that's.
And I gave
a
the
good
example
option.
for folks that weren't at the last meeting, I gave the example last time, my own kids. My son went to half day, but my daughter went to full day. Now, it was a choice that I made as a parent, my wife and I made as parents, and it made sense for our family at that time. I think everyone just has to do that. I think whatever works for your family works.
Are there any changes to the transportation schedule that we?
No, I think it's gonna work out well with that. I mean, we're looking at doing, and we're not sure how that's all gonna work out at this point, but the goal would be for September for all 3 schools to start at relatively the same time. So there isn't that 3rd-tier busing with Wheelock. So we're working on getting that done now, but we'll have more information later in the spring once we get all that information. But looking at the time differential for Dale and Memorial to be pretty consistent, you know, within 5 minutes, and then Wheelock being maybe a 10-minute difference for those folks that need to drop their kid off at one and the other. But not having the situation where if you have a child in 2nd grade and a child in 1st grade, that the 1st grade's off on the bus and then 45 minutes later you wait for your other child on the bus. Try to get it all consistent. So, I mean, educationally it makes sense, but also with professional development and other things, it makes sense for us to, 3 of us to be on, 3 schools to be on the same schedule.
Have you seen any data about the ages of children coming in? So if you have the young, you know, those that were born between, let's say, May and August.
Right.
How do they do in a full day program versus maybe the kids that might be a little
That's
bit older?
something I
Is
look
there
at. I
any
haven't seen that.
Nothing's.
Yeah, because, you know, the deadline's a deadline and then they're all in there, and,
Right.
but I haven't seen that. Again, that might be something too for a family. They know their kid, you know.
They just have to
They know-
evaluate for themselves.
Right.
Where their kid is the best.
Right. Anything else?
So what's the number you need to, of the 100 you budgeted, or projected, how many of those do you need to reach in order to maintain the $3,500 tuition and still be budget neutral?
I have to look at that again. I mean, I think we played around with different scenarios. I'd have to look. I would say if we had 60, we might be able to do that. At 35, we have to double check them, run those numbers again. There is a threshold there. We need to.
Yeah.
You know,
It just sounds like there are probably 60 to 65 parents in the current class who are interested, but there was much higher tuition too.
Right. Right.
What data do you have? You might have just said this a minute ago, I might have missed it. How many in total are you expecting to come into 2014, or we not know that yet?
140.
140.
Give or take
So-
134 right now.
So we could expect maybe 75% based on the survey?
Right. And one of the things that we talked about this morning is, if that happens where we have 120, how we're gonna, are we in the lottery for 100? We're gonna have 1.5 or 2.5 sections of half day, so we need to kind of see how it comes out and see what the interest is. I mean, the first time is always difficult to kind of gauge that. So once we get through this first hurdle, I think, in terms of the first year, we'll have a pretty good sense going forward.
If the population trend flips and we start getting an increase in kindergartners again, are we gonna end up pinched for space as a
I think we'll have probably less opportunity. We might have to have a lottery for 50 or 60 as opposed to 100. And we'll have to see how that goes. And again, the trends say one thing, and then with live births and that whole cohort model of data. But if when the town buys the state hospital and they put senior housing up there, or maybe people who live in town already will move up there, and then their homes will open up with 4 bedrooms, and then families come in there. So I think it might turn around a little bit. We can't. The data that it's interesting. NESDEC that does all of our projections. We put in our last report. There are 2 towns in Massachusetts that have very, very stable student population and have over the course of 14 or 15 years. That's Medfield and Hopkinton. Because as soon as people move out of town and my kid's in college, I got through the district, I did what I needed, now I'm moving to a different town, another family comes right in behind them. So there's that stable stream of students that always come in those 2 towns, and they've seen that for a while now. But again, we don't know what that's going to look like.
So the timeline is you'd like us to approve tonight, and then when do parents start registering? So we can get some finality.
January 29th, is that the meeting?
If I may,
Yeah.
29th is the parent information night for incoming kindergarten parents, but we can put the information up on the website before the end of this week if we needed to. So,
And when do you anticipate having some certainty with the bar? I guess that might be your question.
Maybe mid-February? March? What would be the certainty of how many kids we're going to have in there?
well, we'd be asking people to indicate their choice by the end of February.
Yeah, so we have a pretty good sense of it. Long before town meeting.
Right.
Time to adjust. If need be.
Have you gotten a sense if the teachers are on board with full day kindergarten?
In fact, I met with many of them with,
Sure that they are.
I know.
in the summertime, so that, they were pretty vocal about wanting that. And not just kindergarten teachers, but first grade teachers and second grade teachers, because, they know the advantage that the kids coming to them will have. So there's less intervention happening in the older grades because you have that opportunity for mastery in kindergarten versus the exposure and having to reteach and do that kind of thing. So I'm fairly positive.
Can we have a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation? All those, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first item was the MSBA statement of interest. I think I put in a narrative that we're looking at 2 different statements of interest. One would be for Dale Street, and the other would be, for the accelerated repair program, looking at the Wheelock boilers. I think we probably need to have a larger conversation around Dale Street and timing and how that all works with the town's plans. But I think we were ready to go forward with the Wheelock accelerated repair program to try to take that burden off the town's capital and have the state pick up a big chunk of that. So that there's some timelines involved in this. I think it's February 14th. We need to have that in there. But there's also timelines for voting. So at our next meeting, once we get that together, we'd like to ask you to vote to support that, and I'll present to you what that looks like. And then also the Board of Selectmen. I talked to Mike Sullivan last week about it. He feels like the Board of Selectmen would be in support of that, but they need to approve the actual statement of interest before we can even be considered. So that the town and school side need to be on the same side with that, on the same page. So, that's where we are with that, and probably have a lot more information at our next meeting once we dive into that a little bit. It just opened up in terms of access to the web Friday afternoon, so I haven't even looked at it yet. So we'll take a look at it this week and get a sense of what that looks like. Great. Memorial Principal Search. I think I put the timeline in your packet. So this This past Sunday, yesterday, the advertisement went to the Boston Globe, and also we've advertised in School Spring, which is the online advertisement. I think we'll get a pretty good feel pretty soon of what the candidates are out there. I think Westwood is going to be our competition. We're going to be out about the same time. So Westwood's going to look for an elementary principal at the same time we are. But I'm going to be sending a letter out, to the community and staff of Memorial this week, ask them to be on the screening committee and participating in that. And then the week of February 3rd, I'll select and notify folks. And then the applications close at the end of February on the 24th. We'll start doing the screening and interviews on March 10th and the 14th. Interviews with the superintendent on the week of the 17th. And then site visits if necessary that following week, the 24th, 25th, and 26th. And then the scheduled appointment the week of March 28th. So fairly aggressive, but certainly there's a lot of good candidates out there, and want to make sure that we get the candidates into Medfield before other districts do. So, and who are the two members?
I could have been
I think
one
it's
too.
Tuesday, too. I think it is. So I'll keep you in the loop with all as we go along.
Farther later.
Yeah. Okay, then in terms of district recognition, just a couple of things. One is Blake Middle School students will be doing a day of service on Monday in celebration of Team Day. They've done that the last few years, and they've been very successful. Both the ski clubs at the high school and middle school have begun, and it's been very successful the first week. I put in your packet just a letter that I sent to the participants in trivia night, just to kind of thank them for what they did. And then, lastly, I just want to publicly thank Chief Meany. He's been working with us. We're going to start doing some lockdown training at the end of the month. Probably talk a little bit more about this at our next meeting. But he and his staff have been great. He's met with the administrators, and now he's going to every single school and going to the staff meetings, meeting with all the teachers, and talking about what that looks like. So I just want to thank him. I mean, obviously he's very committed to the town, but also to the school district, and he's been a big help. So I want to thank him. That's all I have for the chair.
So the opportunity for the public to provide any input they'd like to. We'd love to have some. Yeah, nice change of pace. Thanks for coming. Future agenda items on the, obviously we're going to vote, have a hearing about the FY15 budget at our next meeting. The 2014-15 school calendar, is that up for review or approval next week?
That's review, discussion.
All right.
I know there's going to be discussion.
There will be, I think that's a fair point. High school out of state trip, teacher evaluation process, and I've taken an update on your entry plan.
Right, I need to do the final report, so that will be soon.
Great. We hope you all come back and join us. We won't be offended if you don't. Is there a motion to adjourn? Actually, I'm sorry. Was there anything from the community?
Not much. We're starting planning for putting for patients. I don't know if anyone went last year. It was really, really successful. It's probably more on that in the future, but.
It's interesting how I had forgotten, I haven't been in a K-12 in a few years, forgotten how excited the seniors get on a snow day. They're going to have to make it up. As I went to one of the games last week, I had some kids thanking me so much for talking to JJ about that before the meeting. Interesting dynamic. I got some tweets on it.
I was going to say,
Thanking me. Yeah.
I saw a few tweets
Yeah.
about that. Hurry up.
Well, I for one was glad we had school Thursday, so we'll make that one up.
You and I both.
Yeah.
That was a good call.
That was a good.
Not a perfect science. Sometimes it works.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard DeSaga, and you are watching Medfield.tv.